My name is Nora Keene. I'm 28 years old. And the night before my wedding, my mother left me a voicemail at 11:43 at night. 11 words. I counted them later. I've counted them 100 times since. Nora. It isn't too late to stop this. Don't humiliate us. That was it. She hung up before I could say anything. Before I could breathe. I sat on the edge of my bed in a dark apartment, in a dress bag hanging on the closet door, and I played that message 3 times in a row. Not because I didn't hear it. Because some part of me kept waiting for a second message. The one where she said she was sorry. The one where she said she'd be there. It never came. 68 invitations went out to my side of the family. Cream card stock. Hand addressed. $4 a piece to print. 68 went out. 0 came back. Not one aunt. Not one uncle. Not one cousin I grew up with. Not my brother, who I taught to ride a bike in our driveway when he was 6 years old. My mother had sent an email to every single one of them, and she didn't put my name on it. I found out because a cousin forwarded it to me with 3 question marks in the subject line. The reason they gave? My fiancé worked nights as hospital security. That's it. That's the whole crime. To my parents, he was nobody. A uniform. A man who stood in a hallway at 2 in the morning and watched a door. They didn't know that strangers stopped him on the sidewalk to shake his hand. They didn't know why his phone rang at 2 a.m. with voices that sounded like the end of the world. They didn't know what he did between the hours when the rest of the city was asleep. They never asked. Not one time in 18 months did anyone in my family ask that man a single real question about his life. So on a Saturday afternoon in September, I walked down a 90-foot aisle by myself. No father on my arm. No brother waiting at the front. 34 empty chairs on the left side of that room, lined up perfectly, programs still folded on the seats. I made them leave the chairs. I'll tell you why later, and I promise you it's not the reason you're thinking. 48 hours after that, a 10-second video from my reception went up online. Shaky. Vertical. Filmed by a stranger's daughter with a phone in her shaking hand. And the man my family called nobody became the only person in this country anybody wanted to talk about. That's when they understood what they'd done. But by then it was already too late. Before I take you back, and I am going to take you all the way back, because you need to see how quiet the beginning of this was, do me one favor. Hit subscribe. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. City, country, whatever you're comfortable sharing. I read them. All of them. It's the only part of this that still feels like company. Alright. 14 months before that wedding. A hospital waiting room. 2:14 in the morning. That's where this starts. February. A Monday, technically, though at that hour the day doesn't have a name yet. My roommate Tessa had gone over the handlebars of her bike on wet pavement. Nothing broken. A concussion they wanted to watch and a wrist they wanted to x-ray twice. But it landed us in the emergency room of Meridian General in Baltimore at 2 in the morning, and I'd been sitting in that waiting room for 3 hours and 11 minutes. You know the room. Everybody's been in that room. Green vinyl chairs bolted together in rows of 5. Fluorescent lights overhead that make every single person look like they're already dying. A television in the corner playing a cooking show with the sound off. A coffee machine with a piece of printer paper taped over the front that said out of order in marker, and underneath somebody had written, since October. I was staring at my phone. Not reading it. Just holding it and letting the screen go dark and lighting it up again. And somebody stopped in front of me. I looked up. Security guard. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair that needed cutting. Boots that had been resoled. A hospital ID clipped to his belt but flipped around backward, so all I could see was the plain white back of the badge. His face was tired. But it was a specific kind of tired. Not sleepy. Worn down. The kind you get from carrying something heavy for a long time and not putting it down. You've been sitting here 3 hours, he said. Have you eaten anything? I said no. I said the vending machine wouldn't take my card. He said, give me a minute. He came back 6 minutes later with a turkey sandwich still in the plastic and a cup of coffee in a paper cup with a little cardboard sleeve on it. Real coffee. Not the vending machine kind. You didn't have to do that, I said. You looked like you needed it. And that was the whole thing. That's the entire beginning of my marriage right there. A man I'd never met noticed I hadn't eaten. We talked for maybe 7 minutes. He didn't say much about himself. When I asked what he did there, he said, I work nights, mostly. Operations. Safety stuff. But the way he talked was different. Calm. Precise. Like every word cost him something and he wasn't going to waste any. I asked if he liked working nights. He said, nights are when it matters most. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't ask. Then a nurse came down the hallway, saw him, and started to say something. Doctor, he looked at her. That's all. He just looked at her, one flick of the eyes, and she stopped talking in the middle of the word and kept walking like she'd never opened her mouth. I saw it. I want you to understand that. I saw it happen, and I filed it somewhere in the back of my head, and I did nothing with it for 18 months. They called me back to get Tessa. I stood up. I'm Nora, I said. Elliot. Take care, Nora. And I honestly thought that was the end of it. A kind stranger at 2 a.m. One of those small things you remember for a year and never think about again. 3 days later he found me online and asked if I wanted to get coffee. Our first date was a Wednesday afternoon at the Lexington Market. 12:30. He showed up on the minute, wearing jeans and a gray jacket with the cuffs going soft. Still looked tired. I remember thinking, does this man ever sleep? We walked the whole market. Got crab cakes from a counter he swore by. Sat on a bench near the doors and watched people go by, and he talked about Baltimore like a man who loved a city he never had time to actually see. I told him what I did. I work in academic publishing. I edit manuscripts for university presses. It isn't glamorous. It's quiet work and I'm good at it and I like it. He asked me 4 questions about it. Real questions. Not the polite kind people ask while they're waiting for their turn to speak. His phone buzzed 4 times in 2 hours. He looked at it once. I saw the screen for half a second before he tipped it away. It wasn't words. It was letters and numbers strung together like a code. Short. Clipped. He typed 1 line back. Put the phone face down on the bench. Sorry, he said. Is everything okay? Yeah. Just work. He didn't touch it again for the rest of the afternoon. And he paid in cash. I noticed that too. Everybody I knew paid with a card or a phone. He pulled a folded 20 out of his back pocket like it was 1994. When we said goodbye at the corner, he smiled at me. Really smiled, the first one, the one that changed his whole face. Can I see you again? I said yes. Here's what I want you to sit with for a second, because it matters for everything that comes after. I didn't fall in love with a title. I didn't fall in love with a resume or a house or a car or a last name that opened doors. I fell in love with a man who bought me a sandwich when I was too tired to feed myself. Remember that. My family never could. We got serious fast. That's just the truth. Elliot worked hours that didn't make sense. He'd be gone 36 hours straight. He'd come home at 6 in the morning and sleep until 2 in the afternoon and be gone again by 7 that night. Overnights, he'd say. Something came up. I didn't push. I figured hospital operations. Management, maybe. Something with a rotation and an on-call phone. He lived like a monk. Studio apartment in Federal Hill. A mattress on a real frame, 1 good chair, a lamp, and books. Books absolutely everywhere. Stacked on the floor. Stacked on the windowsill. And they weren't novels. Trauma surgery textbooks. Journals with titles I couldn't pronounce. A 3-inch binder with tabs in it, handwritten. I picked one up once. The Journal of Trauma and Acute Care Surgery. You read these for fun? I asked. He said, I like understanding how things work. That's the answer he gave me. And I accepted it. Because when you love somebody, you don't run an investigation. You take what they hand you. 10 months in, I asked him to move in with me. He looked at me for a long time before he answered. Long enough that my stomach dropped. You sure, he said. I'm not around much. I'm sure. He moved in with one duffel bag, 4 boxes of journals, and a pager. An actual pager, in this decade. It went off at hours that made no sense, and he'd be dressed and out the door in under 3 minutes without a word. I loved him for exactly who he showed me he was. Quiet. Steady. Kind in a way that didn't need an audience. I never needed to know what he did for a living. My family was going to need to know. That was the whole problem. I told my mother in March. Over the phone, because I'm not stupid. I'm seeing someone, I said. Oh, Nora, that's wonderful. What does he do? And I hesitated. Just for a second. And I've thought about that second 100 times since, because that hesitation was me already apologizing for him. Before she'd even said a word. He works at Meridian General. Security. Silence on the line. 3 full seconds of it. Security, she repeated. Slowly. Like she was tasting it. Is that administration? Is he in management? It's hospital work, Mom. Of course. I'm sure he's very dedicated. I want to explain that sentence to you, because if you didn't grow up in a house like mine, it sounds harmless. That was the exact voice she used for charity requests she was going to throw away. It's the voice for the neighbor's daughter who didn't get into a good school. Polite. Warm on top. And underneath it, a door closing. I'm sure he's very dedicated, means I have finished thinking about this person forever. We'd love to meet him, she said. Great. I'll set something up. I hung up and stood in my kitchen with my hands still on the counter. Elliot was at the stove making eggs. He didn't look up. They want to meet me, he said. You heard. I heard. He slid the eggs onto a plate and handed me a fork. It'll be fine. No, it won't. He said, no. It won't. But we'll do it anyway. That's the man they called nobody. He knew exactly what was waiting for him at that table, and he put on his good shirt and he went anyway. Because I asked him to. May. 7 o'clock on a Saturday. My parents' house in Roland Park. Restored 1912 Victorian. Faculty art on the walls that they'd explain to you whether you asked or not. The kind of house that smells like furniture polish and expectations. Elliot came on time. He brought a bottle of wine, a modest one, nothing showy, because he didn't have a lot of money as far as I knew and he wasn't going to pretend he did. My mother's eyes went to his shoes before they went to his face. I saw it. He saw it. He didn't say a word. My father shook his hand. Firm grip, held 2 seconds too long, the way men do when they're measuring. Nora tells us you work in hospital security. Yes, sir. Operations and safety protocols. And your educational background? State school. I was on scholarship. My mother smiled. It stopped at her mouth. Dinner was a slow-motion car accident. 90 minutes of it. My father talked about his tenure review. My mother talked about a sabbatical they were planning in Provence and pronounced it the French way. Somebody mentioned a colleague's book. Elliot listened. He answered when he was asked. He did not perform. He did not try to impress them, and I understood later that this was the thing they could never forgive, not that he was beneath them, but that he didn't seem to know it. Then, about halfway through, our neighbor, Vivian Holloway, retired from the classics department, started talking about her adult son. Dizzy spells. Losing his balance. Falling into walls. 3 doctors, she said. 3. Nobody can tell us anything. Elliot set his fork down. That's not vertigo, he said. That sounds like vestibular neuritis. Has anybody sent him to an ENT? Ask specifically about a vestibular function test. The table went absolutely silent. I mean silent. Somebody's fork stopped in the air. How on earth would you know that? My mother said. I work in a hospital. You pick things up. And he picked his fork back up and went on eating. My mother stared at him for a good 3 seconds. I watched her decide something behind her eyes. Then she asked Vivian about her garden. Dinner ended at 9:30. We drove home without the radio on. Neither of us said anything for 20 minutes. At 10:43 my phone lit up on the console. "Mom, we need to talk about your future. Call me when you have a moment. This is important." Elliot reached over and took my hand at a red light. He didn't tell me it would be okay. He already knew it wouldn't be. Now. I need to stop for a second, because I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, Nora, you had to have known. The books. The pager. The nurse who swallowed a word. The way he ordered a room without raising his voice. And you're right. The signs were there. I'm going to show you 3 more, and one of them I looked at directly and walked away from. But hold on to that, because in about 20 minutes there's a moment at my own wedding reception where a stranger in a cocktail dress runs across a ballroom in heels and says 4 words to my husband. And those 4 words ended my family. Keep watching. June 3rd, my father's letter came in the mail. Not an email. A letter. Typed, 4 pages, single-spaced, on his department letterhead from the university. I read it standing up in my hallway with my keys still in my hand. Then I sat down on the floor and read it again. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. I'll give you the part that lives in my chest. We raised you to value education, discourse, and intellectual partnership. We worry that a marriage built on such uneven foundations cannot survive contact with time. This is not about love. It is about the compatibility of 2 life paths. Elliot seems to be a kind man. But kindness alone cannot bridge the distance between your world and his. We say this because we love you. Please reconsider before this becomes difficult to undo. 4 pages. And in those 4 pages, the word unequal appeared twice. The word disappointing appeared 3 times. Elliot's name appeared once. I called him. He was at work. I could hear a hospital behind him, that specific layered noise, monitors and doors and somebody's voice on an overhead page. My dad sent me a letter. What's it say? I read him parts of it. My voice went sideways twice. He didn't interrupt me one single time. When I finished, there was a pause on his end. Then he said, "Do you want to marry me?" Yes. Then we get married. No anger. No defending himself. No how dare he. Just a man who heard the whole thing and reduced it to the only question that mattered. I have never loved anybody more than I loved him in that 30 seconds. The next week my mother invited me for coffee. Neutral ground, she said. A place near the harbor. 3 o'clock. I went thinking we'd fight and maybe find an inch of middle ground. She brought a man with her. Nora, this is Dr. Preston Ashby. His mother and I sit on the auxiliary board together. Preston, my daughter. He stood up. Nice teeth. Nice jacket. Hospital ID clipped to his belt where you could read it, which I want you to notice, because it's going to matter later. Pediatric surgeon. Ivy League for undergrad, Ivy League for medical school. Family place on the water in Maine. I sat down. I sat down because getting up and leaving in the first 8 seconds felt too dramatic, and I'd been trained my whole life not to be dramatic. I lasted 11 minutes. Preston's family summers in Northeast Harbor, my mother was saying. You'd have so much in common. I'm engaged, Mom. She looked at me over her cup. And she said, and I want you to hear this exactly, you're not married yet. I stood up. I left a full cup of coffee on the table and I walked out into the parking garage and sat in my car. She didn't follow me. She didn't call. That was the day I stopped hoping. There's a difference between a mother who disagrees with you and a mother who is actively shopping for your replacement husband while you're sitting right there. Comment on this one for me. Tell me, what would you have done at that table? Would you have stayed the 11 minutes, or would you have walked out at second one? I genuinely want to know. Because I've never been sure I did the right thing. The family group chat did what family group chats do. 23 unread by the time I opened it that night. Aunt Rosalind, has anyone actually met this man? Cousin Bridget, I heard he's a night guard. Like at the hospital? Uncle Charles, well. Nora always did like to go her own way. My brother Grant didn't write in the chat. He did something worse. He posted a photograph of a sunset on his page that same night with the caption, "Sometimes you just have to let people make their own mistakes." 340 likes. Comments from cousins. Comments from people I went to high school with. Little folded hands emojis. Praying for you. Stay strong. My brother turned my engagement into content for his followers, and my family lined up in the comments to grieve me like I'd died. I left the group chat. My mother added me back within the hour. I left again. She added me back. The third time, I left and I blocked the thread. That's the first boundary I ever set in my life. 28 years old. It took me 3 tries. Now here's the second sign. This one I saw with my own 2 eyes. It was late June. His phone rang at 2:14 in the morning. I know the time because I looked at the clock, and I've never forgotten it, because it was the same number as the night we met in that waiting room. 2:14. I remember thinking that was strange. He answered on the second ring. And his voice changed. Not louder. Sharper. Every soft edge came off it in half a second. How long has he been down? Okay. Tube him. If sats drop under 88, I want to know before you do anything. I'm 12 minutes out. He was dressed and gone in under 3 minutes. I heard the front door. I heard his car start on the street below. Security guards don't say, tube him. I knew that. Sitting up in bed in the dark, I knew that. He came home 6 hours later, gray in the face, and dropped into the chair by the window like his legs had quit. And there was blood on the cuff of his shirt. Not a lot. A spot the size of a dime, gone brown at the edges, right at the wrist where a sleeve would catch on something. He saw me looking at it. Rough night, he said. And I said, okay. I said okay. That's it. That's what I said. I want to be honest with you here, because this whole thing falls apart if I'm not. Some part of me had already done the math. Some part of me already knew the number didn't add up. And I let it go. Because I was afraid that if I pulled that thread, the man I loved would come apart in my hands. I was wrong about what was on the other end of that thread. So completely wrong. Third sign. July. I picked him up outside the hospital at 6:15 in the evening. He came out the main doors in scrubs. Navy blue. And I remember thinking, okay. Some hospital security wears scrubs. That's not strange. I'd seen it before. A nurse came out behind him and caught his elbow. Doctor, the family in Bay 3 wants to say something to you before they go. He said, tell them I'll come by in 10. She went back inside. I stared at him through the windshield as he got in. She called you doctor. She's new. The badge system confuses people. His hospital ID was flipped backward on his waistband. Blank white plastic. Like always. Every single day since I'd met him, that badge had been turned around. And I almost asked. I had the question sitting right on my tongue. Elliot, what is on the front of that badge? Then I looked at him properly. He had been awake for 26 hours. There were shadows under his eyes so dark they looked like bruises. His hands were shaking a little on his knees, that fine tremor you get past a certain point of exhaustion. And I thought, not tonight. He's too tired. I'll ask him tomorrow. I didn't ask him tomorrow. I didn't ask him for 2 more months. I have made a lot of peace with a lot of things in this story. That one still gets me at red lights. August. I sat at my kitchen table for 2 nights straight and addressed 68 invitations by hand. Cream card stock, slightly textured. Real calligraphy, I'd taken a class for it, for Saturdays, because I wanted to write my family's names myself. Parents. Brother. 4 aunts, 3 uncles. 11 cousins. My mother's faculty friends. My father's whole department. The Hendersons, who lived 2 doors down my entire childhood and whose pool I learned to swim in. RSVP deadline, August 28th. Elliot watched me sealing them. He was leaning in the doorway with a cup of coffee at 11 at night, about to leave for a shift. He said, quietly, "You don't have to invite them. They're my family." He said, "Okay. That's all." He didn't argue. He didn't say they're going to hurt you. But I saw his face. He already knew. That's the thing about a man who spends his life in emergency rooms. He can look at a situation and tell you exactly how it ends, and he'll still stand there and hold your hand while it happens, because you asked him to. August 20th. 3:22 in the afternoon. My mother sent an email. I was not on it. She didn't copy me. She didn't blind copy me. She sent it to 66 people and left her own daughter off the list. I found out 2 hours later because my cousin Bridget forwarded it to me with a subject line that just said, "Nora, is this real? I'm going to tell you what it said, but I'm not going to dress it up." The subject line was, "We cannot in good conscience attend." She wrote that after long and painful deliberation, she and my father would not be attending my wedding. That they loved their daughter deeply, that phrase was in there, loved their daughter deeply, but that they could not in good conscience support a marriage that represented such a serious departure from the family's values. She asked everyone to understand and respect their decision. She signed it from both of them. And she attached a photograph. A family photo from the previous Christmas. I wasn't in it. I'd skipped that Christmas because of an argument about Elliot. So my mother told 66 people not to come to my wedding, and she attached a picture of my family with a hole where I should have been standing. I read it 4 times. Then I got up, and I walked into my kitchen, and I called the caterer. "I need to cancel 68 seats." There was a pause on the line. 68? "Honey, are you sure?" "I'm sure." And this woman I had never met in person, who I had spoken to exactly twice about chicken versus salmon, said very softly, "I'm so sorry." That was the first kindness anyone showed me that entire week. It came from a stranger on a phone. I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot afterward and cried for 20 minutes with the engine off. August 28th. RSVP deadline. 0. Not one card came back. Not one. Some of them had opened the digital version. I could see the read receipts. They opened it. They looked at it. And they closed it and went about their day. My brother never responded at all. So I made a decision that everybody around me thought was self-destructive. I told the venue to leave the chairs. 34 chairs. Empty. On the left side of that aisle, exactly where they'd been placed. The coordinator asked me twice if I was sure. She offered to move my husband's guests over to fill in the gap so it wouldn't look so bare in the photos. I said no. Leave them. People think I did that to punish myself. That's what she thought. I could see it on her face. That's not why. I'll tell you why at the end. And when I do, I think a lot of you are going to understand it immediately. September 13th. The night before. My phone was quiet all day. No call from my mother. No text from my father. My brother posted twice on his page, a photo of a steak, and a photo of his shoes at the gym. Nothing about me. Nothing about the fact that his only sister was getting married in 16 hours. Elliot came home from an overnight at 11:20. He found me sitting on the couch in the dark with my phone in both hands. He sat down next to me. Didn't say anything for a minute. Just took the phone out of my hands and set it on the table. "We can cancel," he said. "We go to the courthouse Monday morning. Just us. I don't need any of it. No. Nora, I want the wedding. I want them to have to know exactly what they chose." He kissed the side of my head. "Okay. Then we do it your way." At 11:43 my phone rang on the table. Face up. MOM. I picked it up. "Nora. It isn't too late to stop this. Don't humiliate us." Click. I played that voicemail 3 times. Not because I didn't hear her. Because I was still waiting for her to be my mother. September 14th. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I got ready alone. No mother to do the buttons at the back of the dress. No aunt fussing with my hair. No bridesmaids from my side, because the friends I'd asked were the 2 who'd stayed, and they were already seated. The venue coordinator zipped me up. Her name was Marisol. She'd known me for 4 months and she was the only woman in that room. "You look beautiful," she said. "Thank you." I looked at myself in that mirror. Off-the-rack dress. $1,100. Hair done by a stylist who worked in total silence because she could read the room. Makeup I did myself, because I didn't trust anyone else not to make me cry before 4 o'clock. I looked beautiful. And I looked completely alone. I checked my phone one last time. 0 messages. I turned it off and put it in a drawer. 4:02, the doors opened. The quartet started. Pachelbel's Canon, the piece I picked 6 months earlier, back when I still thought my father would be standing next to me with my arm through his. I stepped up to the threshold and I looked out at the room. Left side. 34 chairs. Empty. Programs folded on every seat, untouched. Little printed name cards for a reception nobody was coming to. Right side. Elliot's people. 82 of them, and every one of them was on their feet. His mother Roseanne was already crying into a tissue in the front row. His father Frank had his hand on her back. Aunts. Cousins. 2 guys he'd played rec league basketball with for 11 years. Nurses. A retired fire captain. People from the neighborhood he grew up in. And Elliot at the front, in a navy suit that fit him properly for maybe the first time since I'd known him. He saw me. And his face broke. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear it over the music, but I've replayed it 1,000 times and I know exactly what it was. "I'm sorry." I started walking. 90 feet. I paced it out later, months later, on a Tuesday when nobody was there. 90 feet from that door to that altar. No father. No brother. Nobody to hold my arm and tell me I was doing the right thing. Just me, and white shoes that hurt, and a bouquet I was strangling. And on my left the whole way, 34 empty chairs sitting there like a jury. Every step felt like an argument I was winning. Elliot took my hands when I got there. Both of us were shaking so badly it was almost funny. We wrote our own vows. He went first. His voice cracked in the middle of it. "I don't have much," he said. "But everything I've got is yours. My time. My hands. My whole life. I see you, Nora. I saw you the first night. Then me. I got about 4 words out before I lost it. You're enough, I said. You've always been enough. And I choose you today, and I'm going to choose you every day after this one. The officiant, Reverend Loretta Mays, was crying by then too. She'd known Elliot for years through some volunteer thing he'd never really explained to me. You may kiss the bride. And he took my face in both hands and kissed me like we weren't standing in a room with a hole in it. For about 10 seconds, the empty chairs didn't exist. The reception started at 4:35. Same building, room across the hall. Table 3. Front left. 8 place settings. 8 name cards in that same calligraphy I'd spent 4 Saturdays learning. Margaret. Warren. Grant. Rosalind. Charles. Bridget. My mother's oldest friend Helen. My father's colleague. 8 empty chairs. Perfect settings. Folded napkins. Fresh flowers in the center. Champagne glasses nobody would ever pick up. Plates that would go back to the kitchen clean. Elliot's mother hugged me so hard I couldn't get air in. You're ours now, she said into my hair. You hear me? You've always been enough for us. I smiled. I hugged her back. I meant it. And then I looked over her shoulder at table 3. I looked at that table twice an hour, every hour, all night. I couldn't stop. It was like a cut you keep touching with your tongue. 6:33, first dance. Can't help falling in love. 3 minutes and 2 seconds. He held me. I could feel his heart going through his jacket. I really thought they'd come, I whispered. I know, baby. I know. We danced. The table watched. The song ended and we kept swaying for another 5 seconds because neither of us wanted to be the one who stopped. And I remember thinking, standing there in the middle of that floor, okay. This is it. This is my life now. Just him and me and his people, and that's going to have to be enough. I had made my peace with it. 50 minutes later, everything I thought I knew about the man holding me came apart on a ballroom floor in front of 104 people. Dessert was going out. The cake was cut. The room had that loose, warm noise a room gets 3 hours into a good party. Elliot was over by table 8 talking to his uncle. And somebody screamed. Ray! Ray, somebody help him. I turned around. A man had gone down near the dessert station. 62 years old. Heavy set. Gray suit. One of Elliot's guests. I'd shaken his hand 2 hours earlier and I couldn't have told you his name. His wife was on the floor on her knees, shaking his shoulder, saying his name over and over. The room froze. That's what people do. That is genuinely what 100 people do, they freeze. Somebody yelled to call 911. And Elliot was already moving. He crossed that room in about 4 seconds. Went down on his knees beside the man in a navy suit that cost more than he usually spent on anything, and his entire body changed. I want to describe this right, because it's the moment my whole life turned over. He went from wedding guest to something else. His shoulders squared. His hands went out with no hesitation in them at all. And his voice, that voice from the phone call at 2:14 in the morning, came out of him and cut straight through the noise like a blade through paper. Somebody get 911 on the phone. Tell them, 62-year-old male, witnessed collapse, possible MI, Renfield Conservatory main ballroom, we need a medic unit now. 2 fingers to the man's throat. Head tilted. Ear down to the mouth. He's got no pulse. Starting compressions. And then a woman ran past me. She was one of his guests. Cocktail dress. Heels. I'd been introduced to her at the bar and I could not remember her name to save my life. And she was running full speed across a ballroom in 3-inch heels, and she was shouting. Dr. Vance, I've got an AED in my car. Dr. Vance. I didn't move. I want you to understand, I did not move a single muscle. I was standing there in a wedding dress holding a champagne flute I don't remember picking up. Then an older man appeared at his shoulder. Calm. Sleeves already going up. Elliot. You want me on compressions or you want me on the airway? Airway. My bag's in the trunk of the gray Honda, keys are in my jacket on the chair. Go. They moved like a crew. Like they'd done it 400 times together, because they had. The woman came back with the AED and dropped to her knees on the other side and had the pads out of the packet before she'd finished sitting down. Dr. Vance, it's on. Charge it. Clear, everybody back off him. Somebody time me. I want 2-minute rotations. 2 minutes and 40 seconds later, the man took a breath on his own. The medics came through the side doors at 7:31. And this is the part that finished me. The first paramedic through that door, young guy, maybe 30, got one look at the man kneeling on the floor in a wedding suit with his sleeves rolled up. And he stopped. And his whole posture changed. Dr. Vance. We've got him from here, sir. We'll run him to Meridian. Sir. A paramedic said sir to my husband, the security guard. Elliot stood up. Wiped his hands on a napkin somebody handed him. Rattled off 6 sentences of information to those medics that I did not understand a single word of, and every one of them was writing it down. Then he looked at me across that room. And there was a woman standing 8 feet from me holding her phone up. I didn't even notice her. I swear to you, I never saw her. He rode in the ambulance. He was gone 47 minutes. I stood in a ballroom in a wedding dress and made small talk with 100 people who all knew something about my husband that I did not. That's the part nobody talks about. Everybody in that room knew. His mother knew. His uncle knew. The rec league basketball guys knew. They all assumed I knew. He came back at 8:10 and found me standing by the cake table. Is he alive? He's stable. They're taking him up for a stent tonight. He's going to be fine, he'll be home Thursday. I set my glass down. Everybody keeps calling you doctor. He looked at me. 3 seconds. 5. I am a doctor. Elliot. You told me you worked in security. I do. I run hospital security systems and safety protocol for the whole network. That's a real job and I do it and it's on my contract. But I'm also a trauma surgeon. I'm chief of trauma at Meridian General. I've been chief for 6 years. I've been there 12. I heard the words. I understood each word individually. Together they were nonsense. You're what? Chief of trauma surgery. For 6 years. 6 years. Elliot. Why would you? And he said the thing I've thought about every day since. Because you never needed me to be more than what I was. We stood there in the middle of our own wedding reception with a band playing 40 feet away, and I realized I had married a man I did not know. Or maybe I did know him. Maybe I'd known the only parts that ever mattered. But this was something else entirely. We'll talk about it, he said, gently. Tomorrow. Right now we have a wedding to finish. And he took my hand and walked me back onto that floor. I went. Because what else do you do? We left at 11. We didn't look at our phones. We went home and fell into bed and slept like people who'd been hit by a truck. We had absolutely no idea what was happening. The woman with the phone was named Casey Dolan. She was the daughter of the man on the floor. She'd been standing near the dessert table when her father went down, and she did what people do now, she held up her phone, because her hands needed something to do. She posted 10 seconds of it at 8:04 that night. Shaky. Vertical. Half the frame is somebody's back. But you can see a man in a wedding suit on his knees. You can hear a woman's voice shout, Dr. Vance, I've got an AED. You can hear him say, charge it, clear. And at the very end, you can hear a paramedic say, we've got him from here, sir. Her caption was 14 words, the groom at this wedding just saved my dad's life and everyone is calling him Dr. Vance, posted 8:04 p.m. By 9 o'clock, 3,200 views. By 10, 62,000. By midnight, 340,000. By 6:42 the next morning, when I woke up because my phone was buzzing so hard it walked itself off the nightstand, 2.8 million. 47 missed calls. Friends I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. People from college. Numbers I didn't know. 3 numbers I'd blocked. I opened the app and the video was everywhere. Not just her post, reposts, stitches, reaction videos, people playing it frame by frame. And the comments. Wait, that's Dr. Elliot Vance from Meridian. He's a legend in trauma. He did my sister's emergency surgery in 2021. She's alive because of that man. The Vance protocol is literally taught in my med school right now. I was a resident under him. Hardest 6 months of my life and the best teacher I've ever had. I kept scrolling. Hundreds. Then thousands. I shook him awake. Elliot. Elliot, wake up. It's everywhere. He sat up and looked at my phone, then his own. And all the color went out of his face. Oh, no. By 10:22 that morning, the hospital's communications office put out a statement. They confirmed he'd been chief of trauma surgery since 2019 and medical director of the regional trauma network. They mentioned a triage assessment protocol he developed that had been adopted across the state. They ended it by saying they were proud to have him. Local news picked it up by noon. Then a national outlet. By 2 in the afternoon, my husband's name was trending across the entire country. And the comments turned into something I was not ready for. They stopped being about the video. Dr. Vance rebuilt my daughter's pelvis after a 4-story fall in 2023. She walks. We owe him everything. My brother coded twice on his table. Twice. He brought him back both times. My brother turned 31 last month. He sat with me in a hallway at 4 a.m. and told me my husband didn't make it and he did it holding my hand and I have never forgotten his face. Over 400 of those in the first day. I sat at my own kitchen table, in a robe, on the first morning of my marriage, and I cried until my chest hurt. Not because I was proud. Because I understood, finally, exactly how big the thing was that my family had thrown away without ever once asking a question. Now. My mother started calling at 1 o'clock that afternoon. 11 calls between 1 and 4:30. My father sent an email at 2:47. Subject line, urgent family matter. I never opened it. It's still sitting there. My brother sent a message at 3:15 that said, Nora, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I'm so sorry. But here's the part that actually finished them. And it wasn't the video. Somebody in my own family leaked my mother's email. Stay with me. This is where the whole thing turns. September 17th. 9:22 in the morning. Somebody, I have never known who, and I have made a decision not to find out, took a screenshot of my mother's email and put it on the internet. Full text. Subject line visible. Her name at the bottom. Timestamp. We cannot in good conscience attend. 68,000 shares by the end of that day. And people were brutal. Imagine boycotting your own daughter's wedding because her husband saves lives for a living. A serious departure from our family's values. Ma'am, the man is a trauma surgeon. What exactly are the values? This email is going to follow these people to their graves. She attached a family photo. She attached a family photo. Her daughter isn't even in it. 2 national outlets wrote it up. Somebody found my mother's professional profile online. I didn't do a single thing. I want to be clear about that, because people ask me. I never posted. I never commented. I never gave an interview. I've never said her name publicly to this day. I didn't have to. The truth got out of the house on its own, and the truth did more damage in 72 hours than I could have done in 10 years. Here's what that week looked like on the other side of town. I only know because people told me later. My mother walked into a board meeting she'd sat on for 9 years, and the room went quiet. Not hostile. Quiet. Which is worse. A colleague in my father's department stopped him in a hallway and said, "Warren, I saw the video. Isn't that your son-in-law?" Vance spoke at our ethics symposium 2 years ago. Brilliant man. And my father had to stand in that hallway and say yes. Her tennis partners asked questions with their eyebrows. The women she'd spent 30 years impressing had all watched the same 10 seconds of video that everybody else had watched. And here's the thing about a life built entirely on what other people think of you. It only takes one photograph to knock the whole thing down. Because there was nothing underneath it. There was never anything underneath it. She lost her committee seat by November. Not officially. Nobody says it officially. They just don't put you on the email for the next meeting. Elliot and I left town for a week. A rented cabin up in the mountains with a wood stove and no bars on either of our phones. It was the honeymoon we'd already paid for and we almost canceled it, and thank God we didn't. We talked. Really talked, for the first time in 18 months. On the third day we were on the porch. He had coffee. I had tea. The woods were doing that thing where they're so quiet it's loud. I said, "Why?" And he took a long time to answer. "Because you saw me," he said. "In that waiting room. You looked at a guy in a uniform and you talked to me like a person. No calculating. No adjusting. You didn't want anything from me. You would still have, maybe. Probably. But Nora, I've spent my entire adult life being Dr. Vance. I walk into a room and people rearrange themselves. They stand up straighter. They tell me their symptoms at parties. Somebody's grandmother has been dying at every dinner I've gone to for 12 years. And it's good work. It's the best work there is. But I have not been a regular person since I was 26 years old. And then a woman in a waiting room said thank you for a sandwich. I said, "You lied to me." I didn't lie. I let you believe something. And I know that's the same thing wearing a nicer coat. It was wrong and I knew it was wrong every single day. Then why keep going? Because for the first time in my adult life somebody loved me for who I was instead of what I could do. And I wanted to keep it. Even though keeping it was selfish. I didn't say anything for a long time. A really long time. Then I said, "I'm still angry." And he said, "I know. You should be." And he reached over and took my hand, and we sat there on that porch until the sun went down behind the trees. That's my marriage. That's what it actually is. Not the video. Not the headlines. 2 people on a porch, telling the truth late. October went by. The internet moved on, the way it does. New heroes, new outrages. Elliot went back to 80-hour weeks. I went back to editing manuscripts. My co-workers had all seen the video and none of them knew what to say, so they said nothing, which honestly I appreciated. They kept reaching out. Emails. Letters. Voicemails. I didn't answer any of it. November 8th. 7:12 in the evening. A Saturday. My phone rang. MOM. I almost didn't answer. My thumb was over the red button. Mom. And her voice, I'd never heard her voice do that before in 28 years. Nora. It's your father. He collapsed at a faculty dinner. They're taking him to St. Bridget. It's his heart. They said it's his heart. They said something about a blockage. Nora, please come. Please. I need you. She was crying. My mother, who did not cry at funerals, was sobbing on the phone. I looked up. Elliot was already standing. He had his keys in his hand and his coat over his arm. He hadn't heard a word of it. He'd just watched my face. "Let's go," he said, We got there at 8:20. My mother was in the family waiting area in a cashmere coat from the dinner she'd been at. Her makeup was down her face. Her hands would not stay still. She saw me and came apart completely. "Nora, I know you hate me, I know what we did, I know, Mom." "Not now." "Where is he?" We sat down. 2 chairs, an empty one between us. There were faculty people in the corner who'd followed the ambulance. They recognized me. They looked at the floor. We didn't speak for 55 minutes. At 9:15 a.m. nurse came through the double doors. "Mrs. Keene? Your husband's in surgery now. Dr. Vance is operating." I watched my mother's face. I watched the name land on her. I watched her put it together in real time, the name on her daughter's marriage certificate, the name on the internet, the name of the man whose shoes she had looked at across her dining room table. "Vance," she said. "Yes, ma'am," the nurse said. "Dr. Vance is on for cardiothoracic tonight. Your husband is in the best hands in this building. I promise you that." My mother sat down. Not gracefully. She went down into the chair like her legs stopped working. We didn't talk for 90 minutes. At some point, without looking at me, she whispered, "The man we, oh, God. Nora. What did we do?" And I didn't answer her. Because there was nothing I could say that the room wasn't already saying better than me. 11:47 p.m. The doors opened. Elliot came out in scrubs with the mask pulled down around his neck. Cap still on. That specific gray exhaustion he gets in his face after a long one. He was completely professional. He didn't look at me first. He looked at her. "Mrs. Keene. Your husband is stable. He had a significant blockage in 2 vessels. We did an emergency bypass. It went well. He's in recovery. He's going to be all right." My mother stood up. She put her hand over her mouth and made a sound I have never heard a person make. You saved him. My team saved him. He'll need cardiac rehab. Diet, exercise, medication, all of it. This is a lifestyle situation now. But the prognosis is good." And then she said it. She got it out in pieces. "After everything we did to you. After what we said about you. After we didn't come. And you still," and Elliot said, "Ma'am. I'm a doctor. I took an oath. I don't get to pick who deserves it." He said it kindly. But he said it like a door closing. Then he looked at me across that waiting room. And what I saw in his face wasn't triumph. It wasn't "I told you so." It was sadness. Not for him. For me. Because he'd just spent 5 hours keeping alive a man who wrote 4 pages about why my husband wasn't good enough for me, and he knew exactly what that was going to cost me for the rest of my life. The next morning my father woke up in the cardiac ICU. Room 412. A nurse told him what had happened. Who'd operated. He asked to see him. Elliot came in between rounds. 6 minutes. I was standing by the window. My father's voice was almost nothing. Machines going all around him. Tubes taped to the back of his hand. I was wrong. So completely wrong. And I don't know how to, Mr. Keene, focus on your recovery. Your numbers are good this morning. We can talk about the rest later. And my father said, "I called you nobody." And Elliot said, very quietly, without any heat in it at all, "Yes, sir. You did." My father's eyes filled up. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "No, sir. Probably not. But that isn't mine to give. That's between you and your daughter. My job was to keep you alive. I did that." And he left. He had 2 more surgeries that day. My father lay there and stared at the ceiling tiles. He's going to live another 20 years. And he's going to carry that conversation into every single one of them. That's not revenge. Nobody planned that. Nobody could have planned that. That's just what happens when you spend your life sorting people by their job title, and then one day your heart stops in front of a room full of strangers. November and December, they tried. 8 emails from my mother. 3 handwritten letters. 12 voicemails from my father once he was home. My brother texted on the 15th, "I miss you." My mother's letter came November 20th. 5 pages, handwritten, which I'd never seen from her in my life. One line of it got through to me. We judged a man by his job title and we missed his entire character. And in doing it, we missed our daughter's wedding day, and there is no version of the rest of my life in which I get that back. I read everything. I answered nothing. For 5 weeks. December 12th, I texted her 4 words, "Coffee Monday." Just you. December 18th, 2:30 in the afternoon. A coffee shop neither of us had ever been to, which was on purpose. She ordered tea and never touched it. I ordered coffee and drank half. 32 minutes. She apologized. She cried. And for the first time in 28 years, that woman did not explain herself. She didn't say you have to understand our position. She didn't say we only wanted what was best. She just said she was sorry, and then she was quiet. So I laid out my terms. I'd written them down on my phone in the parking lot because I knew I'd lose my nerve. 1. We are not going back to normal. Maybe not ever. I'm not promising you a timeline. 2. No holidays. Not this year. 3. No opinions about my life unless I ask for them. Not my job, not my house, not my marriage, not my children if I have them. 4. You will respect my husband. Not tolerate. Not accommodate. Respect. Out loud, in front of people, forever. She nodded. She said, "I understand." And she didn't ask for anything back. That was the first thing she'd done right in 18 months. Christmas Day, they invited us. Big dinner. Everyone. I said no. We spent it in a row house in the south end of the city with 14 people crammed into a kitchen built for 4. Elliot's mother made enough lasagna for 30. His father fell asleep in a recliner with the game on. Their dog Biscuit got a whole dinner roll off the counter and nobody even yelled. It was loud and messy and warm. It felt like a home. My phone buzzed at 6 o'clock. Merry Christmas. We miss you. I read it. I didn't answer. Not yet. New Year's Eve we stayed in. Champagne, the 2 of us, the window open even though it was freezing. I asked him, "Do you think I should forgive them?" And he said, "I think you should do whatever lets you sleep." We watched the fireworks come up over the harbor. I kissed my husband at midnight. I chose this. Every single day, I choose this. Now. The chairs. I told you I'd explain why I made them leave 34 empty chairs on the left side of that room. Everybody thought I was punishing myself. My friends thought it. The coordinator thought it. Elliot never asked, which is one of about 1,000 reasons I married him. Here's why. Because I knew that if she filled those chairs, if she moved his cousins over to make it look balanced for the photographs, then in 10 years I'd be looking at a picture of a full room, and I'd start telling myself it wasn't that bad. That's what I do. That's what I'd done my entire life with those people. Somebody says something cruel at Thanksgiving and by New Year's I've talked myself into believing I misheard it. So I left the chairs empty so I could never lie to myself about it. 34 seats. 34 people who got a hand-addressed invitation and decided a man's job title mattered more than a woman's whole life. That's not a wound. That's a receipt. People ask me if I forgave my family. I didn't. And I want to say something to whoever needs to hear it tonight, because I know somebody watching this is sitting on the exact same thing. You do not have to forgive somebody to be at peace. That's a story people tell you so you'll stop being inconvenient. Forgiveness isn't the requirement. Boundaries are. My family made a choice. They chose status over character. Appearances over their own daughter. Pride over a seat at a wedding they will now think about every single day until they die. I made my choice too. And the man they called nobody, the rent-a-cop they couldn't be seen with, the reason my mother sent an email to 66 people, he's everything. He saw me when I had nothing to prove to him. He loved me when I was just Nora, not Nora from the right family with the right degree. And when my father's heart stopped in the middle of a faculty dinner, for months after that man wrote 4 pages about why my husband wasn't good enough, Elliot put on a gown and opened his chest and gave him 20 more years. That's who he is. Not chief of trauma. Not the guy whose name is on a protocol they teach in medical schools. Not the man in a 10-second video. Just Elliot. The man who brought me a turkey sandwich at 2 in the morning because I looked like I hadn't eaten. The man who held my hand the night my family sent that email. The man I walked 90 feet toward, past 34 empty chairs, choosing love over every other thing I'd been raised to want. I learned something that year. Some wounds close. Some don't. Some of them just turn into scars, and the scar is proof you survived the thing. That's all right. I chose the man who saw what I was worth before the world agreed with him. And I'd do all of it again. The empty chairs. The 90 feet. All of it. Now I want to hear from you. Genuinely. Would you have forgiven them? Not the mother apologized. I mean the 66 other people. The aunts. The uncles. The cousins I grew up with. The neighbors whose pool I swam in every summer of my childhood, who got a hand-addressed invitation and read an email and decided that was enough information. Would you have let them back in? Tell me in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one, and I mean that. And one more thing before you go. 3 months after all of this, I found out what my brother did the week of my wedding. Not the Instagram post. Something else. Something he did behind my back that I didn't discover until I opened a piece of mail that wasn't addressed to me. That's the next story. It's already written. It goes up next week. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. I'll see you next time.